Hey guys, I've got a fun one today. I recently posed the question in our Facebook group, Batman Statue Collector Brotherhood of the Bat Collectibles. I said, what got you into collecting? Why do you collect? What is it? Is it nostalgia? Is it a passion for a certain character? But what is it that drives you as a collector of high-end collectibles? Whether it's high-end collectibles or figures or Funko Pops or whatever you collect, I wanted to know why. Like, what is the psychology behind why you collect? And so I've compiled a whole bunch of responses, which is actually a lot of them are very interesting. Some of them are funny, and some of them are very, it just really gets to the heart of why people collect. And so that's what this video is all about today. So without further ado, let's just get to the comments. Okay, guys, here we go. Jeff says nostalgia, piece of something that reminds me of good times in my childhood, love and enjoyment of the characters and stories. Really well said, Jeff. And I just want to take a second to thank everybody that took the time to do these comments. Eric B says it's good to have some hobbies in life, especially ones that you're passionate about. It brings excitement and it's a healthy distraction from everyday life stresses. Now, the hobby, to be honest, it can be stressful, but if it's more stressful than not, I would definitely get out of the hobby, Alex says, my main reason is because I love the characters I collect. But at the end of the day, these characters leave my view after I close a book or finish a movie. And he just loves having the physical 3D thing, and I agree with that. I love having the 3D product of the things that I love. Carlos sums it up, happiness. You should be happy in this hobby. And if you're not, again, maybe it's time to do something else. But it should bring you happiness. I love to hear that, Carlos. Johnny says, best way to display and express my love for games, anime, comics. Every time I come into my office game room, I smile when I see my pieces all displayed and lined up. It just brings me a lot of joy. And again, that's what it should be about. And I love hearing that, Johnny. It brings you that level of joy. Lawrence says, a few reasons. It's a nostalgic feeling, bringing these iconic icons to life as a piece of art. It's an escape from the day-to-day, and everyone should have a hobby. And I agree with that. Everybody should have a hobby because it's just something to look forward to, something to enjoy. Spencer McDonald says, enjoying the research and the hunt, but mostly for the nostalgia. I'm hearing that word a lot, nostalgia. I think a lot of people from my generation, the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, we like that nostalgia. We like to relive our youth, right? Zach Wildboy says, I've always been a comic book collector, but once I got off drugs and was sober, I threw myself heavily into fitness and collecting. It's become a healthy addiction for me. I'm very thankful that I get more overjoyed thinking about the Prime 1 upcoming events and other things. I thank you for sharing that about your addiction. That's really awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. All right, then next up, of course, we love Susan. Susan replied, I love having a representation of characters I adore looking at me and inspiring me. Plus, the hunt and displays are really fun. Susan, I couldn't have said it better myself. Really well said. That's awesome. Next up, we have Orville. Nostalgia. Love pop culture. Looks really cool displayed. Makes me happy. Again, I love these words. Nostalgia, happiness. You guys notice that the theme is repeating over and over again. And again, the hobby should ideally make you happy. David Brown says, I love having a physical representation of my favorite characters in statue form. That's one of my favorite things, David, is just whenever you love art and it comes to life in 3D form. That is so cool to have that physical representation. Next up, we have Travis, who said that he was enamored since the time he was a kid, and his mom had these Hallmark ornaments, and she would watch his mother replicate these displays during the holidays in my home. He was in awe. My oldest brother always had displayed basement with framed jerseys and sports memorabilia, shadow boxes, and so on. So again, thank you for sharing your experiences. That's awesome to hear about your family history. That's awesome. Eric says, definitely nostalgia and also a representation of my favorite stories. Each statue reminds me of how I felt during a particular comic. And when people ask about one of those in my collection, I get the opportunity to share that story. I love that you share it with others, Eric. That's so cool. Loved hearing that. Mike says, first and foremost, it's the characters that I love from the stories I read growing up in comics. I've always been a collector of something, and I just love being able to see the characters that I played with in games or read in comics or watched in movie shows that I admire. I love being able to see the characters without having to always read the comics or play the game. That's a hobby I love. I love hearing that. That's well said. Nick Bolin says, it's a way to bring your childhood memories and all your favorite toys in adult form, or as my wife calls them, adult action figures. Well, your wife is not wrong. And again, it does bring your childhood back to life. Nick says, I collect because I have an addiction personality, and statues at the very least help me feel a little bit more justified about the crazy amounts of money I waste on the hobby. Goes on to say, with statues, I can see where that money went instead of searching for my binder. Plus, it's probably the one hobby I can have that it can spark a conversation with my parents. I love that connection there. My friend George Ross says, I'm an addict and I love Batman, He-Man, and Lord of the Rings, and I think that the statues just look badass. I love the art behind it. I'm right there with you, George. I definitely understand. I think a lot of times we do have addictive personalities if we are a collector. B. Alex Thompson says, it's great being surrounded by the physical representation. Pop culture has influenced a lot of the things that he loves. Stories have also meant a lot to me my whole life. A big reason he became a writer himself, and that's awesome. Events that changed the character, possibly relating to the events that changed my life as well. I love that you've taken what inspires you and done something new with it. Be creative, right? Jonathan says, I like having something physical opposed to stories on paper to be a reminder of what I love and what gives me purpose. I also love having a vision and it coming together and being proud of years of saving and careful placement to make it all come together over time. Love that, Jonathan. Keith Reed says, I love the characters and I like being able to look at them while I'm in my room relaxing or gaming. Some remind me of a great movie or comic, and it's nice to look at them and be reminded of that moment. The other reason is the chicks. Joe says, to honor characters that meant a lot to me growing up and that still mean a lot to me today. Without heroes and villains and spectacular stories illustrated and authored by hundreds of artists, my life would have been a lot less colorful joy. And I like that. I like that. Craig says, I quit, but I'd say that I wanted a 3D of loved characters. Well, that's cool. That actually would be cool to have family members. Hey, I have a 3D mini Chris, so anything's possible, Craig. Gary says, always liked art and photography and combining that with things I'm interested in physical form that just brings nostalgia for me. Also love having physical representation of things I really like. I'm right there with you, Gary. I can definitely relate. Marcella says, a large part of the nostalgia, I stumbled on this community one day back in 2020 during the pandemic, and I wanted to collect Legos of old cartoons. It led me down a rabbit hole of statue, action figure, Lego collecting. My basement is now covered with my old cartoon favorite statues, and the fun part is my kids ask me about them. That's such a great kid connection there to have that conversation. Dana says, dopamine. I mean, that's true. You know, that rush, that excitement that you get to collect. I think a lot of us feel that all the time. Chris says, love movies. I work in the film industry. I've been a collector since a very early age. My action figures have been replaced by very expensive statues and hot toys. That's awesome, Chris. I would love to hear more about your work in the film industry. Keep us posted. Next up is Sala. I hope I said that right. Simply to always remember these special characters or scenes from a movie or childhood. Also, I would love to talk to my kids about what I love when it comes to movies, anime, and so on. I love that. Again, I love that connection to family. Adam says, childhood nostalgia for me. I grew up with the Terminator, RoboCop, Alien, Predator, Burton, Batman, and so on. It is like traveling back in time with my brother to relive these memories. They are filling me with joy. I love the words you guys are using. That's awesome. Andy says, I love art and finding ways to display statues with different lighting and angles. I enjoy the artistry, the talent of sculptors, and they remind me of getting toys as a child. Again, really well said, Andy. I'm right there with you, loving art. I love it. George says, having a physical, visual representation of your favorite characters as a kid brings the nostalgia to life. Having a hobby helps distract from the everyday stresses. Also sharing with others in the groups in this hobby and seeing what others have is great. And I concur with that, George. Zachary says, the stuff I collect makes me happy, like whenever I was a kid. And again, I love hearing that. Leonardo says, because I love the characters and I love the universe, and it's a reminder of my childhood. Nostalgia obviously plays a big part of it, and again, that continues to be a theme throughout this video, just that connection to our childhood. Brawell says, for nostalgia, for the reason why I can't collect anything very modern, I have a 5-year rule. If it hasn't been 5 years since I started watching, reading, playing, it's an automatic pass. That way I pass the hyper cycle and I don't regret impulse buying. That's actually really a good point. You know, a lot of times we do impulse buy because it's the hot new thing, right? And then it ends up being something we don't care about. Ramey says, I love being surrounded by my favorite characters from movies and comics. On another note, it's a new form of art with exceptional craftsmanship. And man, there's so much talent right now in the statue collecting industry. It's unbelievable. Santino says, I collect because it allows me to look back at my childhood and remember all the good memories.
Take this and that, mix it with the fact that I didn't come from a wealthy home, so now that I have big boy money, I'm able to fill the childhood void. And again, he talks about nostalgia. It's a way for me to show others how I am inside. Really well said. And again, it's just so cool to hear what you guys have to say about these things. Gonzalo says, it's art. It's a living reminder of who I am since the purchase of my first comic book way back in 1991 for you kids. It's passion, identity, and a gateway to stories without end. Very nicely said. Many nice and good replies here. Mine will be a little bit short. I collect to remember that I have a little kid in me who wants to be happy to remember the characters he loves and in some points made the man I am today. Really, really well said. I really like your post. John says, I've had a collector's frame of mind since I was a little boy. I had action figures. Now I have hundreds of statues, action figures, thousands of comics, manga, art books, and encyclopedias, Blu-rays, and video games. I love seeing my passion on display and reliving the moments when I was a little boy. Nostalgia plays a big part. Again, the continued theme. Lucas Black, I love the art, paint, sculpt, and everything. Again, just to see the artistry of these things come to life and with so much talent, it means everything to me. I love that part of the hobby. Christopher says, to reignite the feeling I get from seeing characters I resonate with on screen over and over again every time I look at them. So obviously Christopher probably focuses his collection more on the movies and the TV characters. Peter says, I simply love the sculpted forms. Even when I was young, I was drawn to painting little lead figures, and this led to making dioramas. And I think a lot of times people in this industry started with kits, and we'll be talking more about that here on the channel. But again, it's just awesome to see. Thank you, Peter. Kimmy, I collect because the pieces I chose bring back wonderful memories to take me back to my childhood. To me, it's a feel-good hobby that brings me so much joy. Along with that, my fellow collectors are a fantastic group to be a part of. Well, Kim, we're glad to have you as part of the group. And Samantha Finn, nostalgia, and because it's good for people to have hobbies and collect something and keep some aspects of childhood alive, especially if you're someone who didn't have much of a childhood and didn't get to do these things when you were younger. Again, extremely well said. Thank you, Samantha.
All right, so there you guys go. Again, it's a lot of fun to go back and understand why a collector collects. What is the driving force behind their passion? Does it fill an empty space in their life, or is it, again, is it nostalgia? What is it? And so I really appreciate everyone taking the time to just leave a comment in Facebook. Again, that's a lot of fun, and it's just interesting. It's really cool because we all come from different walks of life. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different experiences, and it's just a lot of fun because the collecting is what brings us all together, right? But it is, again, interesting to me as to why we collect. So if you didn't respond in the Facebook group, and you still want to respond down below, I would love to hear your thoughts and comments about why you collect, what drives you to collect. I would love to read that. I'm sure a lot of other collectors would love to read it as well. So again, thanks for taking the time to to put the comments down below and all of that good stuff. So anyway, I just want to thank you so very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button. Otherwise, I'll see you next time in the Batcave. Bye, everybody. Hey guys, thank you so very much for watching today, and if you're new here, please hit the subscribe button right here on the screen and check out these two awesome videos. I think you're going to love them. And also please join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I would love to have you join in all the fun. Thank you guys so very much for watching. See you in the Batcave.